Good morning. Today's Wednesday, isn't it? So I guess it's Ask the Rabbi Wednesday. A dear friend of mine asked a question about basically what time is ideal for davening. He asked me when do I daven. I don't necessarily daven at the ideal time, place, or anything. What time? It's usually whenever I get to. This morning I got up early enough and I was able to daven before I went to work, but I wasn't able to make it to Minyan because I had to daven before the Minyan in my town, but I had to bring my kids to school and then I'd be late for work, so I just had to daven at home without the Minyan. Each day is different. Sometimes at work, sometimes I don't get to daven before I leave for work, and I daven at work, and it could be quite late. Sometimes I'm able to make it to Minyan for various reasons, and I daven with the Minyan. So I would say there are four main issues to consider about davening. One of which is not really a halachic issue, more of a customary issue, although it might have certain halachic implications. Certainly at one time in history it did, and there are those who hold that it still does. So let's go through these four considerations. It's quite possible to have all four, by the way. Depends on the community you live in and so forth. So let's talk about what these four issues are. One, I think probably the one that I would say is in a certain sense the most important is to daven with the Minyan. And davening with the Minyan specifically means to start Shemona Esrei together when everyone starts Shemona Esrei. That's the ideal idea of what we call Tefillah B'Tzibur, of public prayer. Although the truth of the matter is, if you're not able to do that and you're still able to attend Minyan and answer Kaddish, Baruch Hu, Kedusha, things like that, hear Kriyas Torah, it's still worthwhile to attend the Minyan without Tefillah B'Tzibur. Also, there are different opinions of what Tefillah B'Tzibur is. Most ideal is to start Shemona Esrei together with everybody. There are opinions that as long as you start before the last person who started together finished the first bracha, that also counts as Tefillah B'Tzibur. Another opinion says that when the Chazan repeats the Shemona Esrei, when the prayer leader repeats the prayer, if you start together with him, that counts as Tefillah B'Tzibur. And another opinion is that any time, whether people are davening or the Chazan is repeating Shemona Esrei and you start the Shemona Esrei, at any time during that, it counts as Tefillah B'Tzibur. Some would even say until the Kaddish, and some would even say until Tiskabel, that if you daven before that counts as Tefillah B'Tzibur. There are different opinions. If you do start Shemona Esrei together with the Chazan, you can say the Kedusha together with the Chazan. There are different opinions about that as well. Some people say you should, some people say you shouldn't. And the most common minhag is when you do start the Shemona Esrei together with the Chazan, to say it with to say the Kedusha together, although I've heard people who disagree with that. There's also the question of when the Chazan doesn't repeat the Shemona Esrei and they make what we call a Hoicha Kedusha, a loud Kedusha, or sometimes they call Chatzi Kedusha. It's not really Chatzi. It's not really half, but is it better to start together with the chazan, or to wait till he's done and answer Amen? Certainly, by Shachris, you start together with the chazan if you do that. Another question is, what if you have exactly 10 and someone didn't daven Shemona Esrei yet? And you're going to have to wait for him, because ideally you should have Tisha Onim. You should have 9 people answering. There's also a whole question with that. And some say, well, whoever that is, he should get up and say his Shemona Esrei out loud. The other opinion is that he should just say quietly together with the chazan, and saying it together is the same as answering Amen. But anyway, like we said, sometimes you have other considerations and you're not able to perform Tefillah B'Tzibur. It's still good to go to shul and answer Kedusha, Baruch Hu, and Kaddish, and hear Kriyas Torah when it's possible. A major reason why I say that this is important to 10 minyan is for the sake of your community. If you live in a community that has a minyan and you're not supporting the local minyan, when you're able to, it's problematic. It says if you have a synagogue in your neighborhood and you don't go there to pray, you're called a shachin ra, you're called a bad neighbor. I see in my community, I'm not always able to make it to minyan for various reasons. Now I have much more work than I've had in a long time, and I work far away, and I also, Baruch Hashem, my children are going to school, which was something we didn't have until recently, until a few years ago. And we had those struggles, and so on one hand, at one time it was easier to attend minyan, and now, but Baruch Hashem, the shul has minyan without me most of the time, although not always. There are times when perhaps I might be the 10th, and then I feel pretty bad that I can't make it to minyan. Sometimes I think maybe I should leave work early, or come to work late, particularly if I don't have a group in the morning or something. But then now the kids are in school, that's kind of difficult because I have to bring them to school also, and they go to school far away. One child travels an hour to school each way. That's part of what it is to live in a rural area, but to send your children to school. I have other neighbors who are very Hasidish, come from very choshev families, who homeschool, but I just didn't feel like that was something. We tried it for a while, but it didn't work out. It was much better for us, for our kids to be in school. And whatever, but that's neither here nor there. Let's move on to the next issue. But let's discuss what are these 4 things that are important as far as davening. One is Tefillah B'Tzibur, daven with a minyan, and even if you don't have Tefillah B'Tzibur, but going to minyan, hearing every davar shebekdusha, all the things you can only say with a minyan. But again, like I said, the ideal is to do your minyan to start Shemona Esrei together with everybody else. That's the most ideal way to daven, and of course also have all the other, davar shebekdusha, not to leave before the minyan's over and so forth. Again, not everyone's able to do that, and there's other considerations. The other major consideration that some people would say is more important than Tefillah B'Tzibur is what we call Tefillah Hanetz, or Kivasikin. Now that is that you should daven that everyone should start Shemona Esrei at sunrise. Oh, there's my daughter's bus. I got her on the bus this morning. passing the bus. She would have gotten there earlier if I had driven her the whole way. We're almost to Monroe now, but I'm heading to Orangeburg. So anyway, so one issue is davening with a minyan, the other is kivasikin. Now, it's often said that if you daven kivasikin, if you start your Shemona Esrei right away at sunrise, it counts the same as if you daven with a minyan. Others say that that is only true, and meaning without a minyan, and you daven in kivasikin, that counts the same as if you daven with a minyan. Others say that that's only true if you do that every day. Of course, any day you could say, planning to start do that every day, bli neder. That's a possibility. Although some people might disagree with that approach. You could say the same thing about, those who say that you have to, even though it's not really the halacha, there are those who say that in order to go to the mikvah on Shabbos, you have to go every day, or to go during the 9 days, or to go to Friday during the 9 days, you have to go every Friday or something. The thing is, there are those who say, well, you could say I'm starting now, and of course there are different opinions. But of course the ideal of those two is to have both. Meaning, if you have a minyan that starts Shemona Esrei at 8, then you have the best of both worlds. And those are the two most important issues, perhaps certainly most people's minds, as far as when to daven. However, there are two other issues, perhaps three other issues, that one should have in mind as well, and a few others as well, really more than that. So the next one is guf naki. The Torah was not given to ministering angels, and so we have to talk about these issues. If you have to go to the bathroom, you're not allowed to daven, and there are different opinions of what that means. So, for example, a lot of folks think, like, I personally don't do this, but most Hasidim, except for Breslov, have a very strong minhag. The Rebbe Melech says it's a very big Inyan to drink coffee before davening. Why? Because coffee is a laxative, and that, of course, helps you to use the bathroom. Now, first of all, Rabbi Nachman was against any eating or drinking before davening, even to drink water. Although the issue, of course, Rabbi Nachman, Breslover Hasidim tend to, like we said, to daven at the nates. Many other Hasidim daven much later. Often, a lot of the Rebbes would have stomach issues, have issues with constipation and so forth. I'm sorry to talk about that, but that's the truth, and that's why they would daven late, because it's a halacha like that. Now, Rabbi Nachman had a different approach to that, but again, most Hasidim follow this approach. Most people aren't constipated, but most Hasidim will insist that you have to go to the bathroom both ways. I guess that's enough to say before you daven in the morning. Others will say it's enough if you did the major one, the one that takes more time before you go to sleep at night. I think Pinchas Karitzer said like that. Rabbi Nachman said it doesn't matter anyway, because he said he fasted for, I don't know, a few weeks, and he was still able to use the bathroom. So he said this whole idea of guf naki, all it means is a simple halachic approach that if you don't have to go within 72 minutes, that's generally understood. Now, the Mishnah Berurah brings that, and I think the Shulchan Aruch brings that you should at least try. And if you can't, you can't, and then that's good enough. And then the fact that you tried means that you have what we call guf naki, clean body. This is also very important, especially for tefillin, because tefillin need a guf naki. This is a big issue about how people just go put tefillin on random people in the street, and you don't know if they have to go to the bathroom. someone said, "Oh, but it means that their body's unclean." No, it's even inside the body. That's the issue. Again, Rabbi Nachman disagrees, but most people don't follow Rabbi Nachman in this. And Elu Velu, if you're Breslov or Chosid, you follow Rabbi Nachman. If you're another type of Chosid, you follow someone else. And if you're not Hasidish, I would say the approach of the Mishnah Berurah is the most, and Shulchan Aruch brings like this as well. As long as you try, it's good enough. You don't have to sit there and wait. Of course, once you go, you do have to make sure that you wipe properly. Before you daven. And so therefore, probably it's a good idea to take a shower, before you daven as well, just to make sure your body's really clean. Now the thing is when you take all that time, are you going to miss Nates? Are you going to miss the minyan? And which is more important? And so, in general, I would say, as long as you really don't have to go, and you tried, and or you went, of course, then you have the issues of davening with the minyan, and you try to arrange it that you get up early enough to take care of this, and to also daven with the minyan, or daven nates, or whatever. Let's say you live in a community that doesn't have a minyan, and so then it's probably good to daven nates if you can. Now you have certain communities, depending on where you're located, where sunrise is late, and if you have to go to work, you might have to daven before sunrise, and there are minyanim that operate like that, particularly in the winter. You'll have a shul that every day davens at 6:15, 6:30. Might be the only minyan in town in some, in the local area in some places. And how do you work with that? How do so and it's before Nate's, and is that ideal? The next issue, I would say, so those are the three issues: is minyan, nates, and like in my community, we have only one minyan, but it's 8 o'clock. It's much later than sunrise, So minyan and nates. So my feeling is better to go to the 8 o'clock minyan than to daven nates by yourself. Although we have people in the community who daven nates by themselves, and sometimes they'll come to the minyan if they're the 10th for the minyan or something like that, just to be number 10, even though they davened already. And then, so we have nates, we have the minyan, and we have gufnaki. Those are the major three halachic issues. Now, of course, if you miss all of those, gufnaki is a consideration why to daven later, and if you can get a minyan later, you daven later. That's the main reason why most Hasidim daven late, is because of this issue. I mean, in an ideal sense, meaning, there are people who just sleep late, but the right way is like this, and maybe they got up early, but just they weren't able to daven yet because their body wasn't ready, and then that's why they're davening later. And then certain communities, especially where there's Hasidic communities, you might find a minyan 9, 10, 11 o'clock, even 12 o'clock, especially before, when it's daylight savings time, and noon is actually closer to 1 o'clock. So, you might have a 12 o'clock minyan in certain communities. Usually it's not planned like that. It's just, you wind up, you have enough people, and you make a minyan, and so then now there's another consideration before that is Zman Tefillah, Zman Kriya Shema, Zman Tefillah. Now, there's a latest time to recite Kriya Shema, and there are different opinions when that is, and the latest time to daven Shemona Esrei, and there's different opinions when that is. Now, the difference is with Kriya Shema and Tefillah is that Kriya Shema, alright, you could say Kriya Shema without the brachas earlier and then daven, because Zman Tefillah is usually about an hour, meaning that the ideal last time to daven Shemona Esrei in the morning tends to be about an hour after the Sof Zman Kriya Shema. Obviously, if you wake up early and you daven, you don't have to worry about that stuff. But you should say Kriya Shema first thing in the morning, really, before you daven, if you're able to, especially if you're davening late, just to make sure you made it in time. Without the brachas, you could say it first, and then you say again with the brachas, and there's whole different discussions with that, what that's about. Now the thing is, Sof Zman Tefillah, but if you miss Sof Zman Tefillah, you can technically daven Shemona Esrei until Chatzos, and then there's opinions that you could daven really even later, until the earliest time for Mincha. That's pushing it a little bit. And then the fact of the matter is, if it wasn't on purpose, if it was by accident, then you can make up two davenings, meaning you daven first Mincha, and then you daven a second Shemona Esrei to make up for Shachris. The thing is you could really follow the whole form of what we call Shachris, and just have in mind that your Shemona Esrei counts for the Shemona Esrei of Mincha, especially according to the Rambam, who holds that you could say Birkas Kriya Shema any time of the day, although there are different opinions about that. And then count that Shemona Esrei for Mincha, and then the subsequent, what would be in the form of the Mincha with the Ashrei, that you have in mind that that's for Shachris. That, of course, only works when you're under duress, when it's not something you choose to do. If you choose to do like that, then you lost out. But generally, you can find some excuse, like we said, Nikiyas Haguf and different things, to say a reason why you didn't daven. But that's only if you did it wrong, if you missed the time. But then in that case, the question is, so what should you do? Should you wait? Let's say you missed Chatzos, but it's not yet Sof Zman Kriya Shema. So if it's not yet Mincha Gedola, what do? You have in mind this is Mincha, or this is Shachris? It's a gray area. It's very difficult, but I personally would say you should say that that's Shachris and get it done much sooner, rather than waiting another half hour and having a count for Mincha. But there are different opinions. Each person has to follow their own pasuk. There are many considerations, and of course the ideal is to avoid that situation, always daven on time. But I understand, especially Bachrim have a hard time getting up. Younger people, teenagers, everybody has their own issues, especially and so everybody has to. So that's another consideration is Zman Tefillah, and obviously to try, if you're not davening nates, you should try to daven before Zman Tefillah. But sometimes it's also not always possible. Like me, if this morning Baruch Hashem I davened, but like if I sometimes didn't daven yet, and so I have to daven at work, in between groups, or sometimes there's one group where I could daven there. So maybe I'm not davening till 11 o'clock. Now sometimes in the summer that's still before Zman Tefillah. Each situation is different, and it just is what it is. You got to be realistic with work schedules and all kinds of other considerations. But of course the ideal is always to get up and daven before you go to work, before you go to school. If you go to a school where there's a minyan, you daven there with the minyan at school. Even if, let's say, you usually daven nates, I would say if your school davens a particular time, 7:30, 7:45, so you daven with them. You don't daven, daven by yourself earlier. But again, me, when I was in school, sometimes I got up late. I had a hard time, especially when I was younger, getting up in the morning, and I would often go to another minyan somewhere in town, and come to Seder a little late or whatever. It is what it is. Everybody has their issues that they're dealing with. But Baruch Hashem, that's improved. That's one thing that's improved in my life over the years. Seeing how when I was younger I had trouble waking up in the morning, and now, Baruch Hashem, I was done davening. I think it's Reb Uri of Strelitsk. I'm not sure. One of the Hasidic tzaddikim said, he found something good in the fact that people daven late, is that once you davened already, you feel like, all right, I davened already, I don't have that yoke over my shoulders. But when you didn't daven yet, you still have that yoke over your neck, over your shoulders, saying, I didn't daven yet, I still have an obligation. I myself, I see myself like here, I'm davening. I davened early this morning, and then I'm used to sometimes saying Sukkah Zimra while I'm driving or something, or doing something else, and and now that's not happening because I davened already, and I'm kind of missing that. I don't know, whatever. It's just my personal feeling. Now another consideration that I want to mention is the mikveh. Obviously Hasidim, for the most part, go to the mikveh every day. A lot of Sephardic Jews go to the mikveh every day, and more, just in general, it's become customary even for people who are not Hasidic and not Kabbalistic to go to the mikveh every day. And the question is this an obligation or is this a custom? And why does one go to the mikveh? Now there's Takanas Ezra, which Gemara says no longer applies today. However, there are Rishonim who hold that it does still apply. If someone observes Takanas Ezra for the purposes of tznius, it's probably good just to go to the mikveh every day. This way people aren't like, why did you go today? You didn't go yesterday, However, for example, the Gera Hasidim don't go to the mikveh every day, and they only go according to Takanas Ezra, and I think, before holidays perhaps, I'm not sure. Again, everybody has their own approach. I'm not sure if that's what the Gera Hasidim did in Europe, or it's just something that the Beis Yisrael introduced, not going every day. But for the most part, like I said, other Hasidim, because a lot of things by the Gera Hasidim, a lot of things the Beis Yisrael kind of introduced, and Stipler was very upset at the Beis Yisrael for a lot of these things. All I can say is Elu ve'elu. This is going to bring to another issue. But certainly, if you have to go to the mikveh, according to Takanas Ezra, quote unquote, have to go, it's probably better you do that before you daven, and that's the whole idea of Takanas Ezra. However, there are different approaches to that as well as the idea. And the thing is, which for example, it's nobody's business. I didn't need this morning, but so I davened by myself before I left my house, and then I went to the mikveh when I passed the mikveh, because in my travels and passing a mikveh, there's right now no mikveh in my town. There's a lake, like Shabbos morning I'm on the lake usually, and so the question is it better to go to mikveh after davening? Is it better to come to davening late because of the mikveh? And everybody, again, that's a question each person has to ask themselves. How important is the mikveh to them? Certain people won't have proper kavanah if they didn't go to mikveh, and so is it better to daven later with the mikveh than to daven early without the mikveh? Everybody has to answer that question themselves. Obviously most Orthodox Jews, well, I don't know if we could say most Orthodox Jews. There is a large segment, probably at least half of Orthodox Jews don't go to the mikveh every day. Many don't even go Friday or before, and some don't even go before the major holidays. I'd say most Orthodox Jewish men go to the mikveh before Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Some don't, and everybody has their own thing in that. How do we find that balance? But that's a consideration, especially if you're someone who does go to the mikveh. That's another consideration. Other considerations could include, some people are accustomed to learn before davening. Many Hasidim, many Rebbes encourage that very strongly, to learn before davening. Others would say, saying korbanos and stuff counts for learning before davening, or you can learn just one mishnah or one halacha or something before davening. Satmar Rav says you should learn for at least an hour before davening. I don't always do that. The word shah doesn't necessarily mean 60 minutes. Hour doesn't necessarily mean. I think that's what he meant, though. But again, everybody has their own approaches with that. And so those are the considerations. So, of course, the ideal should be that you daven with the guf naki and the mikveh at nates. Other questions: what if you're davening without tefillin and you're going to put on tefillin later? Is it better to daven Shemona Esrei without tefillin in the morning because you're not going to have access to tefillin until later? And what should you do? That's another question you got to, of course. So the ideal is, of course, you daven with talis and tefillin. At nates with a minyan, with a guf naki, and you went to the mikveh beforehand and everything. And I would say, personally, the most important of those is really the minyan, that because you're showing care for your community. That's just how I was raised. My Zeta's approach, was the minyan, making sure there's a minyan in town, and so forth. If someone had to say Kaddish and they didn't have the minyan or whatever it is. But again, everybody has to find their approach that works, and also be practical and not beat yourself up too much if you have something goes a little bit out of the different. That's why the halachas are like this, that there is flexibility, precisely for this reason. And the same thing, even if you usually go to the mikveh and you're not able to, don't beat yourself up over that either. I remember that used to bother me a lot, and I think I more or less got over it, although, Baruch Hashem, I'm going to the mikveh most days, but, I do miss every now and then, and, when I was a Rav in Richmond, there was a minyan at 6:15 in a different shul. There was a minyan either at nates or around 7 or 7:45 at the yeshiva. And I was like, I want to go to the mikveh before I daven, so that's the question, that was my thing, is I would go to the mikveh and daven in my shul without a minyan at 8 o'clock, and it's like, if 9 more people want to show up, I'm letting people know that's when I'm davening, and it's their loss, but that used to be my approach, and it was probably wrong. I made a lot of mistakes when I was the Rav in Richmond, and I learned a lot of lessons from them. That probably was one of them, but I don't think I would have kept the job just because I went to daven at KBI every morning. I don't know. And then, when they got someone else, he didn't go to minyan, and afterwards he got very depressed and stopped going to minyan. So I don't know. So I wasn't depressed. I really loved that shul very much. I gave my whole heart and soul to it, and I really probably should have. I had some offers elsewhere, and I probably, should have taken them up. But every time we go to Monster Pash, I'm always like, I should have taken that job in McKeesport, Pennsylvania. It's a suburb of Pittsburgh, and it'd be much closer to. I wouldn't have to drive 8 hours to go to Monster Pash. But it is what it is. So those are the considerations. Minyan, nates. Most people don't daven nates, but if you can have a minyan with nates, it's great. But minyan, I think, is more important, sociologically, even if it's not halachically so. Even though I do know people who insist on nates. Minyan sunrise, Gufnaki is also very important, and mikveh, and then of course if you're davening later, to try to daven before Zman Tefillah if possible. I would say minyan is more important than Zman Tefillah, meaning if you only have a minyan that's after Zman Tefillah, I would say, let's say Shabbos, whatever, I would say it's better to daven with the minyan after Zman Tefillah. But if you don't have a minyan, you should try to daven before Zman Tefillah if it's feasible. It's not again. Sometimes people have work schedules. Sometimes people have issues with Gufnaki and other things, and it's not necessarily possible. So it is what it is. Everybody, you do what you got to do. And the main thing is to daven 3 times a day. Now, what about Mincha and Mariv? Should I make a separate video about that? Maybe another time. All right. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment. And thank you for watching.